What on earth has happened to summer? The weather is atrocious today. Heavy rain, dense fog and mist, and quite strong winds as well. Really not ideal ingredients for effective landscape photography. And I came this close to not even bothering at all. But quite regularly with landscape photography, actually walking through your front door is the very biggest hurdle that you'll overcome. And if you can actually get through that and beat that self-doubt, you'll actually quite often realise that you were kind of talking yourself out of going out and trying to get images for no justifiable reason. And that's how I feel today. Although the conditions are appalling, I think there's quite a lot of potential in this beautiful little waterfall I found behind me. So I'll take you in a little bit closer now and I'll explain the compositions that I've found. I do warn you, there's going to be quite a lot of background noise when I go in closer, so apologies for that, but that's just the way waterfall shooting goes. The great thing about heavy rain and flat overcast light like this is waterfall shooting tends to excel in these conditions. And this is a waterfall behind me that I've never ever taken a picture of before because it's frankly never interested me before. The water level is quite high today though, so it's kind of emphasizing those features and making it a little bit more interesting than it usually is. Any images I have seen of this have been kind of taken down there, but frankly the composition down there is quite weak. So when I first arrived here this morning, I kind of had a little look around there and frankly I was very close to actually walking away completely. But thankfully I decided to actually kind of walk up through these rocks and rapids here. A little bit slippy, a little bit precarious, but I'm very glad I did because the composition I have found here, I really like it, I really do, and I'm quite surprised that I've never seen this picture taken here before. And it's just one of those examples of an image that really excels in these conditions. That is the composition I've gone for. I don't know if you can see much on the LCD there. It's probably easier to actually just point to it in real life, to be honest. Ooh, get the focus back. I've set up my tripod nice and low, so I'm having to really kind of duck down here to get to sort of camera level. But I think that's really important. With waterfalls like this, I love to shoot across them. I think it makes them infinitely more interesting than kind of shooting them head on. And by getting down low like this, I can kind of fill my kind of foreground and midground of the shot with the cascade of water. And it kind of almost emphasizes and amplifies the actual size of the waterfall. I mean, the waterfall here is not a big waterfall, but by changing the angle and shooting across it, it actually makes it look bigger than it really is. So I think that works quite nicely. But what I think here is the actual ingredient that steals the show for me is this tree in the background. That tree is superb. I love it. And I can't believe I've never seen a picture with that in. It's just so gnarly and twisted, and it just makes the background so interesting. Without that tree, I think this image would be a bit of a nothing image, to be honest. It would just be your average kind of waterfall shot. But yeah, I absolutely adore that tree. And this is interesting. I don't know whether it's just blind luck. It probably is, to be honest. But the actual foggy conditions make that tree and emphasize that tree so much more because they add a degree of separation in the scene, and the dark kind of twisted branches of that tree just stand out so much more with that backdrop of fog. If you were to take that fog away, I think in the background here you've kind of got hills and you've kind of got trees, and it would just suck away the definition in those branches completely. So actually, in a funny kind of turn of luck, this location works absolutely superbly on days like this where the vast majority of landscape scenarios are just total write-offs. Settings wise for this shot, I'm shooting at f10, although I'm not 100% certain that's going to be sufficient to give me nice sharpness throughout the scene. So I'm probably going to focus stack this, take 3 image focus stack, 1 image focused down on these foreground rocks, the other image at the back of the waterfall, and the final image back on the tree there. And compiling them in post-processing should give me nice sharpness throughout the scene. I'm also shooting this at half a second in terms of shutter speed, which for me is that sweet spot. It gives a degree of detail in that water while still capturing some movement in it. I'm also shooting at ISO 100, which is slightly higher than I usually shoot, but I had to make a compromise to get the other settings I wanted dialed in. And I'm also shooting at 18 mils. I needed the maximum wide angle focal length that I had to fit in this scene, because you know, I want maximum waterfall, but I want maximum tree as well. I'm actually shooting with the lens that I reviewed on last week's video. But I think actually a real key setting here is I've got a circular polarizer on the front, and I'll just take you in and explain exactly why. Okay, so that there that you can see is the image that I've taken with circular polarizer, and you can see the actual waterfall water punches out from those background rocks quite dramatically. But look at this, that is without polarizer, and look at the difference. Quite stark, isn't it? And really, basically what the polarizer is doing is taking all the glare off these rocks here, and that deepens the contrast between the falling cascade of water and the background rocks that it's cascading over. And I think that's really, really important. It's a great example of why polarizers quite often come into their own when shooting scenes just like this. Be wary if you're using polarizers near water though. They absolutely hate it. I use the Lee circular polarizer, and you know, if you get a few drops on the front of this, it can really start to degrade the quality in your images, because when you try and wipe it off, it can create quite a kind of like a misty, kind of hazy effect to your shots, and it can be quite a pain to actually get them dry. So that's something really, really to be wary of. Best advice I can give you is to actually set up your composition without the circular polarizer, get all the settings dialed in, ready for actually putting that on. Whip it out as quickly as you possibly can, attach it to the front, take your images, and then take it off. Because if you leave it on the front like I'm doing right now, it's just an absolute magnet for moisture. I was just about to leave, but I've spotted a second composition which I believe could be even better. Now, if you see this cascade here, that wasn't actually properly formed when I first arrived at this scene, but with all the heavy rain that we've been having, it's obviously overflowed into this part of the waterfall that only shows itself during bad weather like this. And there's a lot more fine detail in this waterfall. It's nothing like the raging kind of waterfall that I was shooting at back there. This is a lot more delicate. And I think it's really, really eye-catching. It's kind of an even kind of curtain of water kind of cascading down this flat rock. So I have set up my tripod right there, super, super low to the water. And what I'm trying to get here is, again, I'm shooting across the cascade of water, but I really want to try and capture as much of the actual cascade meeting the actual pool below it, because I think that's really quite nice, and the kind of the defining line between the cascade and the pool works quite nicely within the actual composition. Also, the water kind of flowing off that way. Oh, I'm getting confused here. There's nice kind of like swirls and kind of bubbles. I don't know if you can see them. They're kind of out here. they're kind of like swirling around, so kind of to the right of the composition there's a little bit of interest there as well. And then of course in the backdrop, the spooky, beautiful tree absolutely dominates. So again, I think this is a really, really nice composition here. Settings wise, I'm a little bit different this time. Again, I'm shooting at f10, and I'm going to have to focus stack this almost definitely, because the actual foreground rocks here are probably about 2 feet away from my camera. So this is going to maybe need 3 or 4 images within the focus stack to actually get sharpness here. I'm probably also going to have to change my exposure slightly. The foreground is going to be shot quite similar to the first image, so probably about half a second to get that nice kind of effect in the water. But my highlights are kind of blowing out in that background there. I think it's because I'm kind of out of the shade where I took my first image back there, so it's changed the lighting dynamics in this scene. So I'm probably going to have to actually shoot the image focused back on the tree, probably at something like 1/4 of a second, which should bring those highlights down a bit and give a more balanced composition right through the scene. Overall, I think this is a cracking little shot, and I'm really, really glad I didn't just walk away from it. I'm going to need to head home now because it's currently TT week on the Isle of Man, which means if I don't leave soon, I'm going to get stranded by the road closures. Overall, I've absolutely loved this morning. It's been beautiful, and I'm really, really pleased with the 2 images I managed to secure. Overall, I would say there's 2 key messages from today's video. First of all, embrace bad weather. And I've said this over and over again. I feel like a bit of a broken record, but it's such a key point. You cannot only shoot when conditions are perfect, because conditions are never perfect. You have to embrace the bad weather, and you'll be really surprised what you can capture in pretty much any conditions year round. And then the second key message of this video has got to be circular polarizers are awesome. If you don't yet have one, you really, really need to get one, because for this type of shooting with water, waterfalls, rivers, seascapes, they're just invaluable. And they're invaluable for 2 reasons really. The first reason is that the effects that the polarizer creates cannot be replicated in post-processing. You can replicate ND filters and graduated ND filters quite easily, but polarization, you just cannot. And the second reason is that I kind of shoot with my polarizer in almost probably 90% of circumstances. They're just so universally useful for landscape shooting that it's a crime not to have them. So yeah, they're pretty much almost a quintessentially compulsory purchase for landscape shooting. They're almost as important as a tripod in many ways. I think they're going to be lucky if they get any TT races in today. It's dried up a little bit, but still pretty savagely bad conditions. Thanks very much for watching today. If you've got any thoughts on the 2 images I managed to secure, pop them down below. And yeah, I'll see you all soon for some more landscape photography. I was going to say that I kind of hope that we get some nice summery sort of conditions, some nice weather, but to be honest, after mornings like this, I certainly wouldn't complain if we get some more mist and rain. I'll see you all soon. Bye.